This spreadsheet here uses two pivot tables to create the total line on the pivot chart, which Excel doesn't do very well by itself. And so that was the solution to create the total line for the two pivot tables. I had the question come up though, okay, well that's great, but what if I want to expand and collapse to years and months and days? And I don't know of a real easy shortcut way to do that. I mean, one thing that you might want to play around with is the filter connections on your timelines and your report connections. So this timeline is connected to both of those pivot tables. So if you wanted to drill into a particular day, that would be one way to do it. And since they're both connected, this is January 31st. And you could even drag in your days into here. But it's not quite the same as expand collapse. But that, just thinking about that as an option, maybe that would help you do that. And you play with your timeline report connections there, and over here you've got the filter connections of your pivot tables, so you can adjust those there, create any timers or any timelines or slicers that you want, connect it to all the pivot tables you want, and then all your pivot tables will work in conjunction. Now, as far as expanding or collapsing, I go expand, collapse entire field. You end up with this problem, which was the question posed: how to deal with this. Like I said, I can't think of a really smart way to do that without a macro. So I mean, one option is to do it twice. Pull those pivot tables over here, maybe we have easy access to it, and then just right-click, collapse 2 times. Of course, if you want to do weeks and months, you might have to, you'd have potentially more pivot tables. No, I guess you just have one detail pivot table and then one total pivot table. So you still have two. You still have two pivot tables. Let's just try it. So let me see if I have that information over here. No, I just have years and date. So we'd have to drag date in here and do a group by in order to get months. But you could drag your months and your weeks over here and then expand that way. You could do this via a macro, which I did really quick. I hate bringing macros in, but sometimes they're the best way to solve something. So I just built this quick macro, this collapse years, expand years. And so you could do the same thing, organize the buttons the way you want for years, months, weeks, days. And it's not a difficult macro to create. So I've got the macro creator over here. And it was collapse years on multiple pivot tables. So it just goes to the sheet where you've got your pivot table. Says which pivot table you want, and for your pivot field years, show detail false. And then to expand it, it's all exactly the same except show detail true. Okay, and I am not a pivot table expert. I mean a macro expert. So pretty much anybody can do this. Let me try something here. Let me drop date into here and see if we can, let me group it here now. Group it here. Date. Group by date. I've got years and months, so let me add in days and quarters. You had said weeks, which Excel doesn't make doesn't make it easy for you to do it by week. Let me show you a workaround. Get rid of quarters, years, months. So you had said weeks and days, so I guess we would do days over here like this. What does this thing look like now? So I guess that work applied to both pivot tables, which is nice. So we've got that. Let's zero in on just a month or two. So here's just the days in these months, I guess, where we have data. Maybe there's more data in February. Okay, so that's all working. Let me see if collapse years still works. It does on both pivot tables. Expand years. Okay, and then so what you'd want to be able to do is just expand, collapse or expand your months. So let me just show you how I do this as a non-VBA expert. So I say developer. I always cheat and I say, okay, record a macro. I'm going to call it collapse months, multiple pivot table. Didn't like that. No spaces. Okay, so now I'm recording. So what I do is I come over here and I say, all right, collapse entire field, stop recording. I come over here to my developer tab, and you can do this by going to view code here. And now I've got this new macro collapse months multiple pivot table, and I can see what I had done here, and I can adapt it to exactly what I want. So instead of all this selecting range, active sheet stuff, I'm just going to tell it to go to the sheet accounts pivot table, grab the pivot table 10, and on the months, make it a show detail false. Okay, so that's essentially what it's, the piece of the macro that I need. And so I can just repeat this, but I can say, okay, for the total pivot table sheet, and it's pivot table this is supposed to be pivot table 9, and the total is supposed to be pivot table 10. So you see that, and you can get those pivot table names by coming over here and just clicking in your pivot table, and then go to here, pivot table name 9. Okay, so that should collapse my months on both of these, and then I can just replicate this by copy, pasting, expand months, multiple pivot table, sheets, and so this is all going to be exactly the same, but this is going to be true. Okay, so let's see if that works. So you can come over here and you can go to developer macros, and now I've got the 4 macros there, and so let me try to collapse my months. So you say run, and it worked. So I collapsed my months. Let's try to expand months, run. There you go. So that worked. Okay, but you obviously can't be doing that, so you need to create these here. So this, you just go to, on your developer tab, you might need to turn this on in add-ins if you don't already have it in. Go here. You want this to collapse months. Okay. Collapse months. There we go. Expand months. Expand months. There we go. So you can clean this up later with your sizes and colors and all that stuff. But that should. So here you could be at this view and you could say, all right, collapse down to your months, collapse down to your years, expand your years, expand your months. And so that, I think, achieves what you're trying to do. Like I said, you have to do it through a macro, so it's a little bit of unfortunate. but it's not too complex of one. Now the point about weeks, now I haven't figured out a better way to do this in QuickBooks than what I do is I come over here and I create a week like this, and then I say equals week number, and I look at the date, and it's going to tell me that it's week number 9. Okay, and then I come over here, and I probably need to expand my data source because it's only going through J. So let me actually show you a quick trick. So what I always do is say last column here, and then I come over here and I change my data source, and I tell it to look through L. And that way, data source connect of a pivot table connect to filter controls that are connected to other pivot tables cannot be changed. Changes or first connected filter controls from this pivot table. Okay, so I didn't like that. It says I can't do that because it's got filter connections. So let's just take it off, and then see if it'll let me change the data source to L. It did. So, come over here, filter connections. Change data source. All right. Bring back our filter connections. Back over on our dashboard. Just curious, does everything still work over here? It does. Okay. All right, so now we've got a week column over here. So what you could do is come over here and in between days and months, drop your week. Like that. And then, did it drop it into both of these? No, it doesn't for whatever reason. Maybe because it maybe did it before because it's a group field, and now it's just a regular field, so it doesn't replicate it. So we'll go like that, week there. And then let's just say collapse to the week on both of these things. Okay, so that all looks right. One other trick that I do for a week, sometimes I use a formula over here to calculate the start date of the week. Sometimes that's useful. The problem with the week numbers, and this formula has a return type, week begins on. So you might want to look at the help there and figure out which one of those makes sense for you. But with that, now it would just be a matter of replicating this this macros that we wrote to collapse the weeks, and then you'd have the full rundown to years, months, weeks, and days. I hope that's helpful.